Good morning, everyone. My name is Kerry Craig, and I am your host today. It is Prosperity Indiana's pleasure to have you participate on today's webinar, Introduction to Economic Development. We wish to thank today's sponsor, Fifth Third Bank. Before I turn over the webinar to Prosperity Indiana's Executive Director, I want to mention a few housekeeping items. Please be aware that all audio is muted. If you would like to ask a question, there are two ways to do so. First, you can use the raised hand icon on your screen, and I will call on you to ask your question, or you may type your question into the question and answer box, which is also located on your screen. We all know that technology can be trying these days, especially while working from home, so if you lose your connection, you may also reconnect using the link emailed to you. Finally, you may access today's presentation and a recording later this afternoon on Prosperity Indiana's Member Resource Hub. And now I'd like to turn it over to Jessica Love, Prosperity Indiana's Executive Director, for some opening remarks. Jessica?
Thank you, Kerry. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. And this is a critical time for all of us to keep learning and to not let up on moving our communities forward. And so as we're thinking to the future of recovery and resiliency of our communities in light of COVID-19, economic development will be a significant element of how we move forward and what success looks like long term. So we're thankful to have you here to learn more about this work. I'm thankful for our team members and our partner speakers for pulling this together today, this webinar. Indiana Economic Development Association has become an increasingly significant partner in our work over the last 4 months and leading the COVID-19 Community Recovery Coalition. And also, we could not host these webinars without the support of our sponsors. Sponsoring today's event is Fifth Third Bank, a supporter of our 2020 webinar series, and our COVID-19 Resources Hub through a Strengthening Our Communities grant. And now I'd like to introduce you to Jacob Brown and invite him to say a few words. Jacob is Vice President and Business Banking Relationship Manager in the Greater Indiana market. He has served Central Indiana for the past 15 years while at Fifth Third, and in his current role, he supports businesses with annual revenues between $2 million and $20 million, and is responsible for helping businesses grow and remain profitable. So, Jacob, welcome and good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for being here, and we appreciate all the attendees and all the other partners in this series. Now more than ever, Fifth Third Bank is proud to remind our communities that we've been standing by their side for over 160 years, and that doesn't stop now. Given these unprecedented times, we are communicating more than ever about the resources and information available to secure the financial stability of our clients, our communities, and our families. At Fifth Third, we too are working diligently, much like the rest of you, to remain calm and consistent while trying to manage our organization. Through clear communication and discernment of our current resources, we have mobilized every asset available to better serve our customers while remaining hyper-vigilant to the needs of our own employees. We'll continue to be at the forefront of sharing our best practices and expertise throughout these unprecedented times, and we are grateful to Prosperity Indiana for gathering us all together to provide information and resources. We're excited to be a part of this webinar and hear the questions of our region and continue to grow our capacity to serve and advise in the months to come. And I thank you for allowing me to be a part today.
Thank you, Jacob, and thank you again to our partners at Fifth Third Bank for making today's webinar possible. For more than 30 years, Prosperity Indiana has mobilized members to create economic opportunities and improve social conditions, particularly for Hoosiers who are most disadvantaged. As a statewide cross-sector membership network of approximately 200 organizations and individuals, Prosperity Indiana's impact through members has strengthened communities and improved lives in rural, suburban, and urban areas in every county. It is our mission to build a better future for our communities by providing advocacy, leveraging resources, including providing training and consulting services, and engaging in an empowered network of members to do this important work. Our members represent human services, the arts, legal aid, congregations, workforce development, real estate, health services, financial institutions, philanthropy, all levels of government, community action agencies, private and nonprofit affordable housing developers, local community economic development organizations, and more. If you are not a member, please go to prosperityindiana.org to learn more. And now I'd like to introduce our presenters for this morning. First is Lee Llewellyn. Lee is the President and Chief Executive Officer of the Indiana Economic Development Association, which is the voice of economic development for Indiana. Made up of economic developers, utilities, attorneys, consultants, financial institutions, higher education professionals, engineers, architects, and construction professionals. IEDC members are passionately dedicated to attracting and retaining jobs for the great people of Indiana. Corey Murphy describes himself as an economic development professional, pin snob, fan of live music, waterfalls, sunsets, and fountains. He is a blessed father of 3. Corey is an alum of the University of Evansville, and he comes to us from Newcastle, Henry County Economic Development Corporation. Valerie Schaefer became president of the Economic Development Corporation of Wayne County in November of 2012. Previously, she served as senior project manager for the Indiana Economic Development Corporation, Indiana's lead economic development organization, where she managed economic development projects for an 11-county region in East Central Indiana. Prior to her time at the IEDC, Schaefer spent 7 years with the Economic Development Corporation of Wayne County, holding various positions, but mostly working within the area of business development. Schaefer is a lifelong resident of Richmond and a graduate from Indiana University East, where she received a bachelor's degree in business administration. She has also completed the University of Oklahoma's Economic Development Institute, a respected training program for economic development professionals. The Economic Development Corporation of Wayne County provides business development services for Wayne County, located in East Central Indiana. We work with site consultants and representatives of companies interested in locating to Wayne County. They also work with existing companies to help them grow and succeed. And now, if you'll just give me one moment here, I'm going to put up the slides. All right, here we go. Lee, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, so thank you very much, Carrie, and thank you, Jessica, and to Prosperity Indiana for the opportunity to be with you today. Carrie, why don't we go ahead and move to the second slide? There we go. So I just want to start with a number of years ago. This was a time when Corey Murphy, who you're going to hear from, was on our board in 2013. We decided that we wanted to develop our own definition of economic development, largely because we had a sense that when people talked about economic development, there was sort of a residual definition that it was just jobs. And we were very aware of the fact that just attracting just jobs, which is how it was sometimes described, really did not talk about, did not really explain, nor do service to the way economic development was being practiced in Indiana. So when we developed this definition, we focused on some key phrases, and I think you'll hear Corey and Valerie echo these in both of their presentations. But the Indiana Economic Development Association defines economic development as the facilitation of investment that leads to long-term community prosperity. And so we share in that focus on prosperity. What we were trying to really focus on was the idea that what economic development is trying to do is to grow wealth, is to grow prosperity, to create opportunity for citizens in our communities and in the state to succeed and again to prosper. The phrase facilitation was intended to recognize the fact that, as you'll hear, economic development has become a team sport. It's not an individual doing something, but it really is our professionals working with a variety of individuals and stakeholders in the community to make things happen and to create an environment where investment is welcomed, an environment where we can attract that investment that again leads to that prosperity. So so it's not a coincidence that we focused on prosperity, that you have Prosperity Indiana also focusing on those same fundamentals. And so again, I think that's why we're honored and pleased to be invited to present our view of economic development. You're going to hear from Corey Murphy, who, as I said, was on the IEDA board at one time, talking about attraction as one aspect of economic development. And then when Valerie Schaefer, who is currently on the IEDA board, will talk about another critical aspect of economic development, business retention and expansion. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Corey Murphy.
Thank you, Lee. Good morning. On the screen there is an infographic that really displays all of the activities that economic developers are engaged in, ranging from talent to small business development to arts and culture. So it is so much more than jobs in each of our communities. Next slide, please. I want to recommend a resource to the viewers here. Jim Collins wrote a couple business books, Good to Great, but he wrote basically a chapter. He calls it a monograph to accompany Good to Great, and it's called Good to Great and the Social Sectors: Why Business Thinking is Not the Answer. And the opening line in this monograph basically made a bank CEO very, very mad because he said business thinking is not the answer when you apply it to the nonprofit world. And Jim Collins' response to the gentleman that was mad was really it's about disciplined thinking and not necessarily just business thinking. And so this graphic here represents what it takes to be great in the social sectors. And many of your members, I'm sure, are from the social sectors or from the nonprofit world. My organization, I'm sure along with Valerie's, we're not for profits, and we depend upon leadership and investment both from the public and private sector. So there's my book recommendation for today, Good to Great and the Social Sectors. Next slide. Regardless of the program or activity within the realm of economic development, community leadership matters. And it's really the one area that we can control and manage and have an impact on. So whether it be business attraction, whether it be workforce, whether it be business retention and expansion, community leadership is really a competitive advantage. And a quote from Jay Garner, site selection consultant: workforce, education, and incentives are all important ingredients in the recipe for implementing a plan. They're all important, but the common denominator of effective communities and ineffective communities is leadership. The quality of public and private leadership drives economic success. Next slide. So this slide really talks about the context in which investment decisions are made and not just business attraction decisions. It could be the local business, regardless of size, considering an investment. It could be a branch plant located in your community, competing for resources with its own ownership structure and competing against sister plants. It could be a family considering where to live, where to send their kids to school. I often advise our elected leadership, our appointed leadership, that this is the context in which, whether we realize it or not, this is the context in which decisions are made. Profit-driven, deadline-driven, it's competitive. So capital has choice, whether we like it or not. Where money is invested, where people live, we have choices. It's comprehensive and it's risk averse. So to the extent possible, we should keep this context in mind as we make decisions in our communities. Next slide. This is an infographic that describes and summarizes very efficiently the site selection process, so attracting new. And I shall share with you that this is the sexy part of economic development. But from a statistical standpoint, what Valerie is going to talk about, business retention and expansion, is where most of the investment and jobs come from. A successful BRE program leads to a competitive site selection or a business attraction program. The other way to describe the site selection process is from the TV show Survivor. The consultant or the company looking to make the investment is looking to vote your community off the island. It is a process of elimination, as the funnel here indicates. They're trying to get it down to a manageable number, and they're looking to eliminate. And so having all your ducks in a row at the community level ahead of time, before the RFP, request for proposal, comes, before the site visit, is incredibly important, because a delay in answering a question or not having the information, and let me give you an example of what kind of question. Shovel ready. So shovel ready speaks to land development or a greenfield development. And in my mind, shovel ready is an overused term, but the information that is represented by the shovel ready process is very helpful in answering an RFP, request for proposal, from the site selection consultant or the company. And we often, early on in this process, we don't know who we're dealing with. We may know the name of the consultant. We probably don't know the name of the company. We have a general idea of their sector, but we have a really good idea of what they're looking for. It's like a dating profile. This is kind of like online dating. And say they're interested in a piece of land. If you don't have a phase 1 environmental or a geotechnical analysis of the soil, and they want in the RFP, and they want you to describe the soil, and you only have 3 days to complete the RFP, you're going to have to leave that blank. So being prepared ahead of time is extremely important. And so back to the shovel ready, I gave you two items within a shovel ready application or within a shovel ready process, one being a phase 1 environmental and the other being a geotech. Next slide. This is from the annual Area Development Magazine, a survey of corporate leaders and site selection consultants. It's from their most recent survey, I believe, 2019, released early in 2020. And really the top 4 highway accessibility, availability of skilled labor, labor costs, quality of life. Over the last couple, 3 years, these have traded places. But all of these are important in terms of site selection, and I would even argue that they're important for our local companies as well, in terms of maintaining their competitiveness. I want to just briefly go into a case study on a business attraction project, kind of a real life project. This was Project MW16. So in my next life, I want to be in charge of naming the projects. These are code words often used to kind of protect the identity. But Project MW16 came looking in 2013. It was a food manufacturer looking along the I-70 corridor, anywhere between Terre Haute, Indiana, and Columbus, Ohio. Looking for about 70 acres of ground, a heavy electric user, a heavy wastewater and water user. And we were fortunate enough to be down to the final 3 in this site selection process. The mid-level executives within the company, along with the site selection consultant, had visited our community a couple times that we know of. I'm sure they were here without us knowing. And we were far enough along that they brought in senior management. The executives of the company, I called it the gut check meeting. And we always ask on a site visit, always ask what they're interested in. You know, it's their time, it's their dollar, it's their investment. So we don't automatically schedule a community tour. I don't automatically invite the local politicians because sometimes the client isn't interested in that. And they're not interested in speaking to the elected officials. In this case, they wanted a community tour and they wanted to be able to interact with a few of the elected officials. So, you know, Indiana is known for its basketball. Henry County is arguably the mecca of basketball. Let me give you 3 reasons why I called Henry County the mecca. Apologize for the bunny trail here. The movie Hoosiers, the Hoosiers gym is located in Knightstown, Indiana. So the home court of the Hickory Huskers is here in our county. We're also home to the Indiana Basketball Hall of Fame. It moved here from Indianapolis in the mid 1980s and is the country's largest high school basketball Hall of Fame. And then we're also home to the Newcastle Fieldhouse. It seats nearly 10,000. And by the way, the Fieldhouse was very helpful in allowing our graduation to go on with social distancing measures in place. Anyway, bunny trail over. We held the meeting at the Indiana Basketball Hall of Fame. They wanted a community tour, so we took them on a city bus. And the mayor was adamant that we were going to visit the sewer treatment plant. I tried to talk the mayor out of it. Ultimately, the mayor won, and I'm glad he won because the sewer infrastructure was very, very important to the company, as they were going to, at peak capacity, they were going to produce 250,000 gallons a day of wastewater. And so it was very important that our systems could handle that efficiently and effectively. And so it meant a lot to the company that the mayor was willing to show off the wastewater treatment plant. Ultimately, we were selected, and the name of the company was Boar's Head Brand. It's a family-owned company. It's been in business since 1905. This was their first build-to-suit manufacturing facility, in their over 100-year history. Their initial project was $80 million and 200 jobs. They broke ground in 14. They opened in early 16, and subsequently they've done 2 more projects. So now that business attraction project is now a business retention and expansion. And so subsequent to their initial investment, they've done 2 more projects, and they employ nearly 700 in our community. And I would just offer that if you're familiar with Newcastle, we were home to one of the original Chrysler manufacturing plants. Walter P. Chrysler personally purchased the plant here, and it operated from the early 1900s basically to the last Great Recession. And so not only was the project Boar's Head good economically, it was also good for the community morale and the community psyche. And so we've enjoyed not only their investment, but other investment, because success breeds success. Next slide. That's the best slide. This is rodent control, and thank goodness he's finally finished. If I can ever be of assistance to you or your members, let me know. Happy to help. And it is my pleasure to welcome Valerie Schaefer, a colleague and a competitor from time to time, but a worthy competitor, to the virtual stage.
Thank you, Corey. I can confirm we do compete, because unfortunately I lost out on the Boar's Head project to Corey. It was a great project for Newcastle. Richmond was originally under consideration, and ultimately we did not get that project, but I think it turned out well for the both of us, because we are located in the same economic development region. Wayne and Henry County are adjoining counties, and the same site that Boar's Head looked at is now the home of Blue Buffalo Pet Food, who built a 400,000 square foot manufacturing plant and employs around 200 people. So worked out for both of us that these wonderful sites that we had prepared in our communities turned out to be huge economic development successes. So I am here today to talk to you about business retention and expansion. And you want to go ahead and move the slide for me, please. Business retention and expansion is referred to in economic development as BR&E for short. So you will hear that term a lot, BR&E. And it's really the foundation of every successful economic development program. There's really no point in trying to attract new companies if you don't support those that already exist. That's a similar premise to any business that has customers. Customer retention is extremely important, and it's no different in economic development. So there is a gentleman by the name of Eric Canada. He owns a very successful company that helps you track your business retention and expansion visit information. He has a definition of economic development here that it's a definition of business retention and expansion. And I think it's one of the best that I've seen. It's very comprehensive. So I'm not into reading slides, but I do want to read this to make sure everyone hears it. But in economic development, business retention and expansion is a program designed to strengthen the connection between companies and the community, while encouraging each business to continue to grow in the community. Through direct interactions, events, and research, the program seeks to gain insight into business practices, planned future actions, as well as the challenges of targeted companies. Then turn this business intelligence into value-added services, programs, and/or products that address individual and shared company opportunities and problems. I think that's a really great way to explain what a successful business retention and expansion program entails and what you hope to gain with the program in place in your communities. Next slide, please. So why is this so important? we all know it's easier to retain and help existing businesses or help existing customers than it is to attract new customers or new companies to your community. You know, in my experience practicing economic development for the last 14 years, I would say you're very fortunate and are very successful as an economic developer if you can attract a new company to invest multi-million dollars into your community once every, 1 to 2 years. It's highly unusual to see, numerous new companies make significant location decisions in a community. So the flip side of that is you will most likely experience several business expansion projects every year. And that is if you are out meeting with your existing businesses, finding out how they're doing, what are their challenges, how can you assist? If you don't do that, you will not know what opportunities might exist because those companies may not engage with you when it's time for them to make an investment decision. So it's extremely important to get out and meet with your existing companies. It's said that about 80% or more of a community's growth will come from existing businesses. So there again, that's just another reason to continue to understand the opportunities that exist within your community. And then, as Corey talked about the site selection process, one component of that often is for new companies that are looking to make investments. They will want to meet with your existing industry. They want to interview them, so to speak, without you present, so that they can hear from a peer what it's like to operate in your community. So if you're not out providing support to existing businesses, they might share that with the company, and that could affect their location decision. Next slide, please. So what does an effective business retention and expansion program look like? Well, first and foremost, it's building relationships, and you do that through regular visitation. You also do that through social opportunities within your community, getting out, going to business dinners and fundraisers and various events. And, once you meet with a company representative in their office, taking that extra step to get them to know them personally in a social setting is also very important, because the more that you build upon that relationship, the more comfortable that they're going to be with you as a professional, and then also as a colleague in the community, and they'll be willing to share more information with you. A good example of this is just last year, I worked with a local company who was looking at either a consolidation or an expansion in my community. And I worked with the plant manager very closely to build a business case to help obtain necessary incentives that the business was requesting in order to stay in the community. And there was another component of that project that entailed the closure of a public street to assist the business with site utilization. Well, before we got to that point in the project, that plant manager left. His replacement came in during COVID, so I had to set up a virtual meeting. We'd never met face to face. And I started talking about this project and asking additional questions about the progress that they've made. And the gentleman's response to me was, "I'm sorry, but I don't know you, and I don't feel comfortable providing you with this information." So I had to take a step back and provide him a contact at the company's corporate office that had been engaged in the project as well, and asked him to reach out to her to gain confidence that he was able to speak with me about this business intelligence that he was reluctant to share. So that's just one example of why relationships are really so important, because if you want a company to share with you, they're going to have to get to know you first. And then as you start to work with existing companies, follow-up is so important, and providing that support that a company might need. So you're there to not only seek information, but almost every business visit I make, whether it is virtually now through Zoom or just a phone call, or back when it was in person, if there's an element that I can assist with, whether that's making an introduction to an organization that could provide support, or in another instance, a company had made a significant investment and they didn't think that they could qualify for a tax abatement, but they actually could have, I worked with them along with the city's administration to get a tax abatement retroactively approved that saved the company hundreds of thousands of dollars over 10 years. So that follow-up is critically important, not only to help that business be successful, but also building your credibility with the business and demonstrating that you can be of assistance to them. Next slide, please. So I want to provide another case study for a local retention and expansion project that happened a couple years ago. And this was with a local company called Wolverine Worldwide. They'd been in Richmond for about 30 years, and it's a $2.3 billion company headquartered out of Rockford, Michigan. They hired a site selection consultant to handle the site selection of where they would consider consolidating one of their company's customer service centers, which meant that we were at risk of losing 130 existing jobs. But not only that, we had the potential to grow that business by 184 jobs. So there was a lot at stake with this project. All of the site selection factors that Corey mentioned that applied to business attraction projects also applied to this business retention and expansion project. We had to prove that we were the best location for this business to remain and expand in the community, which meant a multi-million-dollar investment on behalf of the company. One of the critical elements, I think, that's especially true for local business retention and expansion projects, is the quality of your local workforce. When there's a new company considering an investment, sure, you can talk about what their experience might be. You can talk about the levels of educational attainment you have and the type of training that you have available. But with an existing company, they've experienced it and they know what the quality of the workforce is. So sometimes that can hurt your chances, but luckily for us in this case, it really helped our chances because they had a lot of individuals that had worked for the company for decades that really led to the success of this organization in Richmond. So in our case, it was a huge benefit that they would be retaining a highly qualified existing workforce. And then another really critical component to this retention and expansion project was the real estate. Within our business, it's really important to build a great reputation and great relationships with your real estate community as well, whether that's brokers in the Indianapolis region or Chicago area, or local brokers that likely represent a lot of real estate opportunities. Just a tip, something that I do is I always use the listing agent for a property. That way I'm not playing favorites. I'm not reaching out to the same real estate agent time and time again to quote unquote represent the EDC. You wanna make sure that it's fair game for all of them. So in this circumstance with this company, they were in an existing building and it was limited in their expansion potential. And the real estate agent that represented the building was also a part owner in the building. And so when that property was deemed to no longer work for the project, he was not happy about that. And so I had to have a frank discussion with him that at this juncture in the project, your building will not work and there's no other existing building on the market that will work. The company would not entertain a build-to-suit. But fortunate for us, we had a former Dana headquarters in the community that had sat vacant for over a decade that the city of Richmond had actually recently purchased for another company, and the deal fell through. So I had to somewhat pull and direct that company, Wolverine, from that real estate agent's property to a city-owned property, which did not go over well, but it was what was best for the community. It did take me a little while to repair that relationship with that real estate agent down the road, but ultimately we did repair it, and we work together great now. He understands the impact that this project had on Richmond, and we were able to move forward. Next slide, please. So in addition to the real estate needs, once we overcame that and found a building that would work, we really had to get creative with the incentives that we had at our disposal. Luckily for us, we had some certified tech park funds that had been underutilized in the amount of about $5 million that we were able to apply to the project to renovate the building and do a lease back to the company. And then we were also able to offer a cash grant for the training of the new employees and property tax abatement, both for the real estate and the personal property brought into the building. And I've talked a lot about relationships today with companies, with the real estate community, but I want to emphasize how important relationships are with your local elected officials and your city administrators. Had I not brought local elected officials into the project very early on to explain the importance of retaining this company, I probably never would have been able to get all of the incentives approved that we were offering for this business. You have to have meetings with your elected officials prior to it going to a public meeting. You want them to feel comfortable with the decisions that they're making and with the investment they're making in the community's future. So I just can't express enough how important it is to know your elected officials and to feel comfortable reaching out to them to talk about a project when it's necessary. And then also working closely with city administrations. I did not build the incentive package for this project on my own. I worked collaboratively with the mayor at that time, as well as the director of economic development and infrastructure at the city of Richmond. I think it was Lee or maybe even Corey that mentioned, you know, economic development is a team effort. Absolutely. You know, I can propose all that I want, but if I don't have the support from local leaders, then the project will never move forward because I don't have the authority to approve any of the deals. I only have the authority to present them on behalf of the community. And then I also just want to stress confidentiality and how important that is and relaying that to your elected officials prior to it being the time when you can actually talk about a project in public. That can certainly kill a deal. Throughout this entire process, Wolverine did not want their competitors to know what they were considering and where they were considering it. And so had any of this information leaked, it could have jeopardized our ability to move forward and retain this very important company in Richmond. Next slide, please. So next, I just have a couple of pictures I wanted to share to show you the impact of this project in the community. Wolverine Worldwide moved into this building, as I said, the former Dana headquarters, but this was vacant since the 90s. It was right off of Interstate 70, so the first exit into Richmond on a major interchange. So it was your first impression coming into our community for many people visiting. So we're very pleased with the outcome of what this real estate looks like today. Next slide. These are just a few pictures of the interior. Next slide, please. So this is now a state-of-the-art customer service center that employs around 300 individuals. Next slide. And next slide. So in summary, just want to emphasize the team effort that it takes to build a proper business retention and expansion program in your community, using various elected and non-elected leaders to help support your existing business base. And then also, I think I already said many times, the relationships and building trust are just so critically important. No two projects are the same. You really have to look at what you have to offer and what you have in your toolbox and tailor that to the needs of every company individually in order to be successful in economic development. Communities are so vastly different. Many economic developers work for many different communities. So I think it's important as you're starting in a new position in a new community to really understand the assets and amenities, as well as the local tools that are available, because they're not the same in every community across the state, and definitely not the same from state to state across the nation. And then lastly, funding resources do change, programs change, so you really want to continue to educate yourself over the years so you're really up to date on what you have available at your disposal in order to be successful in this role. Next slide, and that is my presentation for today. I look forward to answering any questions you might have.
So I just have, this is Lee Llewellyn again. I just have a couple of final slides or final thoughts before we open it up to questions. If we can move to the next slide. As we have this year, as we have been navigating our way through COVID-19, we've seen our economic development professionals have been engaged in a variety of different things in their communities. Both Corey and Valerie have been a part of developing some local funding mechanisms to try to help support their local companies. As Jessica may have alluded to very early on in the process, we've been involved with Prosperity Indiana. We've been involved in a coalition that's included United Ways, that's included the libraries, tourism, chambers of commerce, recognizing that we're all trying to navigate our way to the next phase and figure out how we help our communities reopen and restore. And early in the process, we engaged Senator Travis Holdman, who is the chair of the Senate Finance Committee, to give us a sense of what's happening with state and local budgets. And, one of the things he shared with us was his thought that, local government, state government is not going to be able to spend its way out of the impact of COVID-19. The only way we're going to do that and that we're going to restore our local and state budgets is by growing. And as he said, we're going to have to grow our way out of that. And that really is what economic development is all about. So we have adopted this theme for the remainder of this year and going into next, that economic development is more important than ever. And, that includes many of the community development efforts. That includes many, many aspects of our local economies and figuring out how we pull this together, how we get people back to work, how we help them re-engage in the workforce, how we help those existing companies restore their customer base, get their supply chain back. That's all part of economic development. And so we just wanted to share with you, first of all, that within your local communities, we'll be looking for those partnership opportunities, but also recognizing that going forward, we're going to have to all pull together to sort of grow our communities back, to reopen, to restore those opportunities. So thank you all for the opportunity today to share with you. We'll now open it up for any questions that you all have. I guess I'll start though, while you're all thinking about your questions or typing them, whatever it may be. One of the things that, so this will be to Valerie and Corey. One of the things that I think you touched upon, but maybe revisit, is just the role that workforce and workforce development plays in economic development. It's not something that people recognize perhaps as much. We think about tax abatement, we think about sites and facilities, but to chat a little bit about, the role that workforce and workforce development now plays in the jobs that you both are doing.
Go for it, Valerie.
Okay. Well, I would just say that over the years, the role of workforce has risen to the top of companies' needs. They want to ensure that if they locate or expand in your community, that they can find the workers that they need to be successful. And it's our job not only to know our communities by the numbers in terms of educational attainment, but it's our job to use those numbers to develop new programs along with our workforce development professionals to ensure that we have necessary training available for the positions that already exist in our community. We have a local employability coalition in Wayne County right now that's looking at our high wage, high demand jobs, and we're working backwards to look at when are students exposed to these careers? And if they're not, how do we help the schools introduce these career opportunities at a younger age? And how do we build upon that through the career pipeline to make sure that the career awareness piece is there? But then also, what types of classes can they take in high school that lead into these careers? And then beyond that, what type of post-secondary education or training opportunities do we have available that they can take advantage of? And if programs need to be created, we're willing to do that, and we're willing to put the resources behind it to ensure that individuals have access to education, but that our companies are able to find educated individuals that they need to be successful.
So what's the connection between workforce and quality of life? Because that's another issue. Quality of life is something that economic developers have started talking about, which traditionally is not something that was thought of as being endemic to economic development.
Yeah, that's we refer to that as talent recruitment and retention. And we have to have a viable community that people want to live in. So we're now building programs as economic developers, not only to attract companies, but also now to attract individuals. And so that means we need to invest in our community's quality of life in order to be able to present a positive business case to people that they want to take a job here, live here, and make a life here. So that's just another added challenge to the work that we're doing because in a lot of rural parts of Indiana, we're losing population and not gaining it. So for the long term, we've got to start focusing on that talent recruitment and retention aspect if we want to be viable.
I would just offer an issue that has come to the forefront in the last few years, and it applies to both workforce and quality of place or quality of life, and that is the importance of good education and the importance of high quality daycare. That topic, 10, 15 years ago, probably would not have been on the radar of your typical Indiana LEDO, local economic development officer or organization. And particularly in my community, and I think Valerie's too, it's very much on our radar because it speaks to the people attraction, people retention. It also speaks to a long-term strategy to reduce generational poverty. The statistics here in much of Indiana, our youth live in poverty at a high percentage. And so it's less likely for that demographic to leave your community. And so what can we do as a community to bend the trend the other direction And so it very much becomes part of the talent conversation, and it becomes part of improving the quality of life. The difficulty, in my opinion, is that many of our organizations are funded by local elected officials. And I love local elected officials, but they think in very short-term increments, oftentimes the same length as their term. And we live in a very society dominated by the McDonald's drive-through and Twitter. But childcare and early childhood is a long-term play that requires systemic investment and enhanced investment, and it's very, very important here in Henry County.
I think we're close to finish time. So, Carrie, I'm looking to see. I don't see any questions in chat.
Here's a question. Thank you for mentioning quality of life and how that plays into economic development. How do your roles play into developing more affordable housing in your communities?
Well, in my role in Richmond, we are fortunate to have an opportunity zone in downtown Richmond. So we have gone through the process of identifying 5 buildings suitable for redevelopment in downtown that are currently vacant, that have willing sellers. And we're working really hard to reach out to housing developers who are interested in investing in our community. One of these buildings my office actually owns. It's a former Elder Beerman department store that's about 103,000 square foot standalone building downtown. We are getting ready to send out an RFP seeking developers to submit proposals to us who are interested in redeveloping that property. Now, our preference for that property is market rate, but still affordable housing.
Great. Corey?
Sure, thank you. In the last 12 to 18 months, our office has worked with and promoted 2 or 3 housing projects across our county. That is a new role for us. It is very, very important. The challenge here is that the cost of a 2x4 in Henry County, just outside the 465, loop. I tend to say we're out here in the hinterland. The cost of a 2x4 is likely the same out here as it is inside 465, and yet the markets are different. And so we have to figure out a way to smartly incentivize developers. And we too are looking in our downtown area because there's a twofer there, if you pardon the phrase. If we can bring people downtown and also address affordable housing, we get multi-benefit to those projects. Candidly, COVID has impacted our efforts in that regard, but we continue to press forward. The state recently relaxed one of our incentives, or provided some language to us, and that is the use of tax increment finance for housing or residential TIF. And I think that's very, very important in terms of developing housing opportunities.
Well, thank you. We are, as Lee mentioned a little earlier, we're running out of time. So on behalf of Prosperity Indiana, I want to thank each of you for participating in today's webinar, Introduction to Economic Development. I especially want to thank Lee Llewellyn of the Indiana Economic Development Association, Corey Murphy of the Newcastle-Henry County Economic Development Corporation, and Valerie Schaefer of the Economic Development Corporation of Wayne County. Please look for an email from me this afternoon inviting you to take a very brief survey. Your feedback is important as we use this information to enhancing the quality of our webinars and training. Also, please check out our website, www.prosperityindiana.org, to view upcoming events and trainings for August. Next Monday, July the 27th, we will host a webinar, Racial Equity in Community Economic Development, which we will explore how Indiana communities and neighborhoods achieve equitable development and quality of life outcomes such as affordable housing, quality education, living wage employment, healthy environments, and transportation. We will be joined by Taisha Hardy Sellers, who is the former president and chief executive officer of the Edna Martin Christian Center, and Jenny Connolly Bowen, who is the executive director of the Community Builders Network of Metro St. Louis. The webinar begins at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, and registration is open on our website. Before we close, I would like to thank today's sponsor, Fifth Third Bank, for their support in helping us to host these informative webinars. Again, we appreciate your participation. This now concludes our webinar. Thank you and have a great week.